Good morning, class. Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Alassane Abdoulaye. I am your professor of American Civilization. So today we're going to start our first lecture in American Civilization for the first semester. And in this few seconds, I just needed to introduce myself and to let you know that the lecture has started. And please inform your classmate to join me in the room. You're going to follow through the YouTube channel, and I'm going to lecture through the Zoom room. So just like yesterday, as long as I progress, you can post your questions. I will go slowly to help you understand the depth of American civilization. So I'm going right now to share my screen and let you know what are the fundamentals of American civilization, what I expect you to understand in American civilization, and what are the objectives of the course. I start with a course description, so please follow me. I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. You have this American civilization. All right? And in terms of objective of the course, what do you have to understand is that I have some objective with my course. And the objective is here. In terms of course description, the course description is that it is a course that introduces you as first-year students of English to American civilization. American civilization is very large, but this course is going to introduce you to the American civilization from early history of America, going through the colonial period up to the creation of the USA as a new nation. Early history, it means the beginning of American history. And then we move to the colonial period. And then we finish with the creation of the United States of America as a new nation. As I told you, the sequence of American civilization or of American history is very long. It is a long sequence of American civilization. That's why I have decided to narrow down the scope of the course. What does it mean? To make it short, to make it simple, in order for you to understand some important stages in American civilization. You will understand that civilization here means history, culture, but it takes into consideration many other demands like economy, like politics, and everything. So for this purpose, the course deals essentially with pre-colonial and post-independence USA. What does it mean? Pre-colonial, it means before colonization. And post-independence, it means after independence of the United States. And the course will focus, it means the course will insist on three major periods by the French. America, too, was colonized by the British. I will tell you that. It was simply called America. It was called America and referred to as a New World because it was unknown to the rest of the world at that time. To make it simple is that I told you in this chapter or at this period of American history, we cannot talk about United States. Forget about United States. Because here it did not have that name yet. It was called America. It was a new continent. Europeans did not know that part of the world, and Europeans traveled. It was unknown to them. When they discovered the land, the American continent, they called it the New World. That's how Europeans navigated, they explored the world, and they found a new continent that was a new world. So why? For more clarifications, the name United States of America is used now, but it came after independence and political sovereignty. It is after the country took its independence. It was a colony. There were 13 American colonies. When the 13 American colonies became independent, now they were politically free, and that was in 1776. 1776 marks the independence of America. And when the 13 colonies became independent, they gave themselves a name. They called themselves United States of America. So to help you understand, class, that's why before 1776, do not call it United States. It is America. This name came after independence. That's why in this chapter, you will not hear me talk about USA a lot. I talk about America. Today, America, the America of today, is the third largest country in the world. If you classify the biggest countries in the world, America today, or you call it present day USA, is the third largest country in the world after Russia and Canada. It means that Russia is number one, Canada number two, and then America number three. What is the surface of America, the area? It is 9 million square kilometers. Kilometer carré, we say is square kilometers. Its land is 9 million square kilometers. In terms of geographical situation, United States shares borders with Canada. In the north, you have Canada. In the south, you have Mexico. And in the east coast, you have the Atlantic Ocean. And in the southeast coast, you have the Gulf of Mexico. And on the west coast, you have the Pacific Ocean. And this is the representation. Canada, Mexico, Atlantic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. You have a clear representation of this geographical situation of America in a map, and you have a literary explanation of America. It shares borders with Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. It has the Atlantic Ocean on the east coast, the Gulf of Mexico to the southeast, and the Pacific Ocean on the west coast. Population. This is an estimation. It's just like today you say Senegal is around 18 million. There is no exact number because the population evolves every time. But you can say that the population of America today is estimated to be 330 million people. 330 million people. All right? So early history of America. Exploration. When I talk about early history of America, I refer to exploration. The explorers who discovered the continent, the exploration of America. What happens? You start with many among you, when they talk about the discovery of America or exploration, all of you talk about Christopher Columbus in 1492. That's what you have learned in history books. That's what you have been taught so far. But be careful, class. The thesis that Christopher Columbus, a European navigator of Italian origin, discovered America in 1492 is questionable. The thesis is largely shared in history books. That's what you read in many history books. This is what you have learned from your professors in secondary school. But there is a contradiction. This version of history does not prove the correct history of the discovery of that part of the world. This means simply that in the American version of history, for Americans, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Many historians prove that. Why? History has it that historians say that 500 years before Columbus, a Viking explorer called Leif Erikson discovered the land. I repeat, before Christopher Columbus, 500 years, it means 5 centuries, the land was discovered by an explorer who was called Leif Erikson, who discovered the land. When was that? It was at the time of the Viking Age. C'est l'ère des Vikings. Vous connaissez les Vikings, la cigarette Viking. The Viking Age, explorers, very adventurous, very courageous. They discovered the land before Christopher Columbus. All right? So who are the Vikings? The Vikings are a tribe. They were brave people, bold, it means big, coastal, adventurous. They like traveling, navigating, exploring. Where do they come from? They lived in a country known as Scandinavia in the past, and that country is called today Norway, c'est le Norvège. They originated from Norway. And the Vikings were bold people, adventurous, brave. What you have to understand is that they are Europeans, like Christopher Columbus. But Christopher Columbus has an Italian origin. So the Vikings have a Norwegian origin. So a Viking explorer, I told you, called Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson is a son of the great explorer, Erik the Red. They are from the west coast of Norway. And Erik the Red, he was nicknamed Erik the Red because he spent years in Iceland. Let us start with this. The father of Leif Erikson, let us start with the father. Forget Leif Erikson. Now let us talk about the father. The father himself is a Viking explorer. His name is Erik the Red. What happened, class? Erik the Red spent years in Iceland. What is that? It was in 1982 AD. AD means Anno Domini, after Jesus Christ, après Jésus, ou bien après Christ. You see, 1982 is older than the time Christopher Columbus came in America. Christopher Columbus came in America in the 15th century. And look what history book showed. There was a European navigator, a Viking called Erik the Red, who in 1982, Anno Domini, after Christ, he led an expedition, it means an exploration, to a new territory. And he established in that area for centuries. It means he occupied that land for centuries, years. And Erik the Red called that land Greenland. Greenland, understand that. Why he called it Greenland? That is Erik the Red. I have not yet talked about Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson is the son of Erik the Red. Let us talk about the work of his father first. His father navigated. He explored the territory. He occupied Iceland. Okay? And in 1982, he led an expedition to a new territory. He moved from Iceland. He wanted to see more land. That was a time of navigation and exploration. C'était le temps de découverte. And he established a settlement in an area for centuries. That was the father, Erik the Red. And that area is called Greenland. Why he called it Greenland? He gave it an attractive name like that to make people love it as a nice place. He wanted it to be a very nice place. He wanted it to be an attractive place. And Erik the Red called it Greenland. You understand, class? And now what happens? Children like what their fathers do. As the English proverb goes, like father, like son, tel père, tel fils. Eric the Red, Eric the Explorer, who conquered, who discovered Greenland and Iceland. He is a Viking explorer. He had his son, and his son is named Leif Erikson. So his son learned a lot from him. And his son was passionate about exploration. His son too wanted to become an explorer like him. It's just like today, a big wrestler, Duballes was a wrestler. So when his kids grow, Balagai and Sanchez, they wanted to be a champion like Duballes. Eric the Red was an explorer, a great Viking explorer. He discovered. And when his son was born, Leif Erikson wanted to do the same like his father. And let us see what Leif Erikson did. At the age of 25, the son of Eric the Red, Leif Erikson, he too explored the seas. He did like his father. And he went further to the west, and he went beyond Greenland. What happened, class? Look at here. Greenland is where his father is taught, Eric the Red, and now the son, the young boy, Leif Erikson, is going to do better than his father. So he went where his father is taught, and he went with a crew, equipage of 35 men. He did a good job. What did he do? The voyage he took was not easy. He was a young boy. He had to navigate unexplored waters. You see, class? He is doing navigation without map and compass. Map means cut, and compass means boussole. Imagine you are on the sea without any map, without any compass. It's a difficult voyage and situation. This boy is going to go beyond where his father is taught. And he did it. So what is the merit of this Viking explorer? He too will become a great Viking explorer, more known than his father. Why? Because Leif Erikson became immortal. Why he became immortal? He landed in North America. He arrived in North America in a place called Vinland, class. Now his son is arrived at Vinland. Look, the father started at Iceland. The father arrived in Greenland and gave it a nice name to attract people. And the challenge of his son, Leif Erikson, is to go beyond where his father is stopped. He navigated and he became immortal. Why he became immortal? He landed in the New World. He landed in North America. And the son, Leif Erikson, landed in a place called Vinland. Class, this is the history. This is the reason why many people say that, no, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. America was discovered by the Viking explorer, Leif Erikson. Now, let me explain to you why is there a contradiction and what is the problem with Christopher Columbus? I told you that this guy, the Viking Age, they arrived this year class, 1982 AD, it means Anno Domini, after Christ. Look at here, Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492. There is a big difference, 500 years. So Christopher Columbus with the European colonization began because the other one was not a colonizer, he was an explorer. And then with Christopher Columbus, we are now in 1492. What happened? In 1492, a Spanish expedition headed by Christopher Columbus, the Italian navigator, sailed west to find a new route to the Far East. Class, look at this and listen to me. Here is the objective of Christopher Columbus: to head to the west, to sail to the west, and to find a new trade route, une nouvelle voie vers l'Orient, the Far East. Christopher Columbus was going to Asia. He was not going to America. Let us clarify. Christopher Columbus, I repeat, was not going to America. He was going to the East in Asia. So an important thing to know is that in this challenging history, why there is a contradiction, is that the objective of Christopher Columbus was to conquer more land for the Spanish Queen. That was his objective, and he tried to navigate a new route to go to the Far East in India, in Asia. That's where he was going. It's just like you today, you say, I am going to Sebi Kotan, but you don't know where Sebi Kotan is. Take that as an explanation, I will come back. So what happened, unfortunately, it means accidentally, Christopher Columbus was lost. He was lost. And he landed in an unknown place. What does it mean? He arrived in a place that he did not know, that Europeans themselves did not know. So when he arrived in a place that he did not know, for him, in his ideas, he had arrived in Asia, in India. And thus, this was a new world. Yes, he arrived in a place that nobody knew, a place that he did not know himself. It becomes a discovery, but a discovery by loss. He was lost, so he discovered a new world, a world that was new to them, and for him, that was a discovery. And automatically, so much the better, they said. So the right version is that, however, it was not the true destination of Christopher Columbus. He was not going to America. He was going to the Far East, in India, in Asia. But the advantage is that he discovered something new, and they considered he discovered a new world. This is the reason why some historians say that Christopher Columbus was rather lost. He was lost, and he landed on a new world. And that was an opportunity, an occasion for him to say, I discovered now. I come back to my explanation. You are going to Sebi Kotan. You don't know where Sebi Kotan is. You take your car, you run, you drive, you arrive at Jamñajo. You say, I want to see Sebi Kotan. They say, no, this is not Sebi Kotan, this is Jamñajo. And you say, oh yes, this is Jamñajo. I have never seen Jamñajo. So you have discovered Jamñajo. But what was your objective? Jamñajo is not Sebi Kotan. You had to go back to Sebi Kotan. So to simplify things, Christopher Columbus was going to the west, to the east, to India, to Asia, and he landed in a totally new world. And for him, that was a good occasion. He was lost, but he discovered a new world. And people started saying, Christopher Columbus discovered America. So Columbus was head of 3 ships and a crew of 90 men, equipage. So after 70 days of sailing, navigation, they discovered an island in the Bahamian archipelago. So he arrived on the island in the Bahamian archipelago. So this was his first encounter with a native. So this encounter was peaceful and friendly when they came. So Columbus believes that he found the West Indies. I repeat again, Columbus still believed he found the West Indies. The West Indies are in Asia. Then he called the inhabitants there the Amerindians. There is a problem. So once back to Spain, Christopher Columbus was welcomed as a hero. All right? They said he discovered. Now, class, what happens the following year? 1 year after, Christopher Columbus had to go back now. Now you understand he was lost. He has to go back now and see the American continent. I want to check if you understand what I am saying. Can you post in the chat that you understand what I am saying, class? Can you post it in the chat so that I check that you understand what I am explaining to you? Do you understand, class? All right. So the following year, I repeat, in 1493, 1 year after. All right? So Columbus sailed again. It means he returned again with 17 ships to establish a permanent settlement on the island of Hispaniola. Now he returned for colonization, for settlement now. And that's why you see there were so many Spanish settlements in South or North America. And you see the name Isabella. In South America, it was named after Queen of Castile with Columbus. And when he discovered that, they gave him the name of a governor. And Christopher Columbus continued more exploration surrounding the areas. Now, it means the conquest is started. It means a settlement is started. So what are the consequences of the contact? What are the consequences of these voyages? Now, understand that Europeans have started going to the New World. They have started going to America. Europeans survived the first contact better. Now, I talk about the consequences of the contact with, when the European colonizers came. The first thing, the Europeans who arrived, they survived the contact better. However, later on, in the 17th century, over many of them died from difficulties while adjusting to the new environment. What happened? When Europeans arrive in America, you have to understand that they are in a new world. They are in a new environment. It was not easy in the 17th century. That's why they had to adapt. There was a problem of adaptation. Many of them died because of difficulties. The new environment was hostile. There were also epidemics, diseases. Epidemics to many native cultures. Many native cultures, disappeared because the speakers of those languages died. Because these cultures died, because there were diseases, epidemics. And what was the consequence? Still talking about the consequence. You will see that the population of North America will go down. Why it goes down? Because it was estimated to be 5 million before Europeans arrived, before Columbus arrives. And when they arrived, there was a contamination, diseases, epidemics. It killed people. It killed people. Many people died. And the population that was 5 million went down to 1 to 2 million. You see one big consequence of the contact. So class, when I ask you the question, I tell you, tell me about the consequences of the contact between European and Americans. Number one was, a kind of, health issue, epidemics, diseases, killed. The American population went down from 5 million to 1 million or 2 million people. It's just like when the COVID-19 hit the world. A country like Italy, many people died. The population of the country went down. It's just an explanation. When Europeans came to America, the contact was not easy. There were contaminations. epidemics, diseases. They contaminated each other. Many cultures died. Many people died. There was also positive things. What was it? The exchange was, there was huge exchange of both plants and animals. In terms of exchange, you will see that both Europeans and Americans learned new things from others. Some of them had the chance to see new plants, others had the chance to see new animals. Example, animals like horses, donkeys, sheep, pigs, and cows were unknown to Native Americans. Native Americans did not know horses, donkeys, and sheep, and pigs, and cows. That's why even today, Americans who come from the South, when they come to Africa, they like donkeys because it was not common to Americans. Americans did not know these animals. These animals were brought by Europeans. So the exchange became positive here. Likewise, that's what Americans learned from Europeans. Now, what did Europeans learn from Americans? In terms of plants too, Europeans found potatoes, maize, tobacco for the first time, and these were discoveries. Europeans too started seeing plants that did not exist in Europe: potato, maize, and tobacco. Is it okay, class? I move. And because of the diversity of European societies, the Spanish and the English could not imagine living peacefully in the same place. So you see that now two worlds have come together. The old world, Europe, existed before, and the new world, America, the American continent. It was unknown, now it is known because it is discovered. It is known, and now they call it the New World. Now the concepts of New World comes from this class. That's why it was called the New World. I repeat, it was called the New World because the other part of the world, like Europe, did not know that part of the world. It was discovered and preserved. So there was hostility, conflict between cultures. So there was a cultural shock. Il y avait choc de culture. Why? Some Native Americans did not like much other indigenous people. There was a kind of culture shock. There was a kind of resistance. I repeat, why was it? Because some Native Americans, they did not like much other indigenous people. And Europeans tended to look like to Native Americans and considered a single people. So to Europeans, Native Americans seemed lazy, and they believed they did not profit from the potential of nature. So when Europeans came to America, they said, wow, this is an extraordinary land. And they said that Americans are lazy. How can they have this beautiful continent, this nice nature, and they don't profit from that? It's just like when you go to Dakar, or you come from my zone, from the Fouta, you go to Dakar, you will say, you guys have a very nice climate. You have to profit from the sea. We don't have any ocean in the north. We see the sea, you see the green area, you go to the Casamance, you see the green land, you say, guy, you should profit to grow vegetables. When Europeans came to America, they were fascinated. They were kind of impressed. But they had a judgment. They said that Americans are lazy. Why do they have a beautiful land? They don't prove that. But the answer is here. Viewing time as fluid, they had only vague concepts of the past and the future. So they seemed utterly unreliable. Europeans thought that Americans did not consider time very seriously. So people cannot rely on them because they did not profit from that. Why? Because they viewed nature as a great mother. The answer, and the answer is that Americans could not consider nature as something to be sold. It's just like when we do in Senegal. Today, if you have some land, vous prenez tous vos terrains, vous les vendez. Ils n'ont aucun rapport avec le sol et la terre. Eux, c'est le contraire. Ils aiment la nature, ils la préservent, ils ne le vendent pas. So for Americans, they viewed nature as their great mother. They think the land is their mother. They could not understand how pieces of it could be sold or owned by individuals. They could not understand why the land should be sold or why the land should be owned by individuals. It should be for the profit of everybody. So this is a reason why, class, from the first European settlement until now, the main focus in conflicts between these continents, culture, system has been land ownership. Et c'est pourquoi tout le problème depuis l'arrivée des colons, depuis l'arrivée des explorateurs, tout le problème des États-Unis, c'est le problème de terre. Parce qu'il y avait occupation des terres, et il y avait usurpation des terres ou bien vente des terres. Excusez-moi des terres. You get me? So that was the big issue. Now I move to early encounters between Europeans and Native Americans. Sorry, class. What are these encounters about? I repeat, early encounters. It means first encounters between European and Native Americans. Class, when European explorers and settlers encountered Native Americans in the 1400s, a long history of mutual incomprehension arrived, began. Okay? I repeat, when European explorers arrived in America in the 1400s, a long history of incomprehension, it means miscomprehension, began. So it means they did not understand each other. So these encounters were a clash of worlds. C'était un choc de deux mondes différents. It was a clash of worlds. What world clashed? I repeat again, the old world and the new world. The old world, Europe, the new world, America. Now it is not unknown, it is known, it is a new world. Class, I repeat again, this is a new. So Americans were not familiar with other continents. Americans did not know them. And they had so rare contact. As a result, plants, animal diseases, and human society evolved into forms of new world and no worlds. So they did not have this contact. And when European came, animals came, new plants came. So it was a kind of shock. So each world is discovering the other world. So both European and Native Americans caught diseases, I told you. They were contact, health issue, contamination, epidemics. Some would die, some would survive. Now, class, we move to colonization. Colonial America. I told you it is part of my technical words. Okay, what is colonial America about, or what should you know about colonial America? Please post your messages in the chat to help me understand that you grasp well what I am saying. And if I am speaking so quickly, let me know. I help you, class. Can you, class, post in the chat how it is so that I follow, please? I will pause 1 minute. Can you post in the chat, class? And let me know if everything is okay, class. And you can post your questions too. Colonial America. What should you know about colonial America? In colonial America, it means after the discovery events, after the exploration pass, after now discovery, now the continent is known. The following decades, more and more ships sailed to establish colonies. Now we are no more in the time of exploration, like Leif Erikson, like Christopher Columbus, they were explorers. Now we are at the time of colonization. The continent now is discovered, The continent no more called the unknown world. Now it is a new world. And something new has to be occupied. That's what European believes. Europeans think that now the new world is interesting. They saw the nature, they are interested, and they are attracted. So the following decades, colonization is started. More and more ships, said the navire, started. So colonies was then quickly established, colonies. First, who arrived? The Spanish began building their American empire using islands such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola as bases, and they expanded largely. You see, when the Spanish moved to America, here it is a whole continent. They went to Puerto Rico, to Cuba, and Hispaniola. And then France. Remember that at this time of history, America was a colony. Today, they are a world superpower. But in this time of history, the world superpowers were in Europe. You can talk about Spain, you can talk about France, you can talk about England or Portugal. So the Spanish, the French, the English, and the Portuguese dominated the world at a certain time. America was a land of competition. If I explain to you, class, in simple words, America was an attractive land, and it was a land of competition. So these three superpowers are going to occupy the land. The Spanish began building their American empire using islands such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola. And France founded colonies in East North America, a number of Caribbean islands, and small coastal parts of South America. France too started, but when France came, France went totally to the north, to Canada. That's why Canada was French first. Canada was occupied by the French. And then in the south, Portugal went there to colonize Brazil. What happened? You did not hear England. So the last was England. Class, I repeat, it was a competition. Spain, France, Portugal, and now England arrived. You see how it is? So it means the American continent could have been Spanish, Portuguese, or French. So the English came later. They were the last to come. But what did they do? England was the last to come. And England settled primarily in the Eastern Sea in the 17th century. I make it simple. The English or England came the last because C-class, Spain arrived, France arrived, Portugal arrived. Now England was the last to arrive. And they settled in the Eastern Sea in the 17th century. What did they found there? They found there small numbers of Dutch and Swedish. The first successful English colony was Jamestown, established in 1707 on the James River in Virginia, with the presence of small numbers of Dutch and Swedish. So class, when I ask you the question, what is the first English colony to be established in America? It is Jamestown. Jamestown is the first colony, the English colony, and it is named after King James. And when they arrived in Jamestown, it was on the river in Virginia. They found there some people because they were the last to come. They found there Dutch people. They found there Swedish people. That's why I told you the American continent could have been more French, Spanish, and Portuguese than English. But the English settled there. So what happens? They settled there and they had now to impose themselves. In the 17th century, new waves of settlers arrived. D'autres vagues, de nouvelles vagues. They arrived and established commercial agriculture based on tobacco. So when these settlers arrived in America, You see, America, as I told you, was a very nice land, nature. So the land was profitable, and they started doing business, developing commercial agriculture. And with that agriculture, they all, most of the time, developed and they produced tobacco. There were still conflicts between Native Americans and English settlers, but the colonies managed to expand pretty fast and more people in each colony. So the problems insisted, but they continued, exploring and occupying the land. Class, I told you about colony. And you may ask me, sir, what is a colony? It is simple. A colony was ruled by a governor, and the governor was appointed from London. What does it mean? This governor had full, and he relied upon the legislature elected at the colony to vote taxes and make laws. What does it mean? It's just like our university. It was kind of governance in distance. When the colony is established, remember that we are in America in this period. America is a new continent, it is a new world. And where does the colonizer comes from? The colonizer comes from Europe, England, and their government is in London. Their kingdom is in England. So, but they sent colonizers to go to the other land. How are they going to be represented there? They nominate or they appoint a governor. It's just like our university. Where is our headquarters? Not CS, it is at Jamñajo. Where are you students? Some of you are in Bignona, others are in Ziguinchor, some are in Podor, others Saint Louis, Dakar, Sébikotane, Mbour. Where am I? Do you know? I am in my house. I am in my house. So how do we do it in distance? So does the president of the university go every morning in Saint Louis? No, he has an NO administrator. He is appointed, he represents the same class. The king or queen of Great Britain, of England, sends a governor. The governor is going to represent them in the colony and to rule as an administrator. The governor will have control in the administration, but the governor depends on the legislature that is established in England. So it means the parliament is in Europe, in England, the administration is in another continent. I hope now you understand. So at the beginning of the 17th century, there were 3 European colonial powers. And class, you need to answer me these questions when I ask you. What were the 3 main European colonial powers? I told you at this part of history, the world superpowers were France, England, Spain, and Portugal. America was not yet known. It was a baby. It did not even exist, potentially speaking or politically speaking, because it was dominated and occupied. So these European colonial powers, France, Spain, and England, they were in competition of dominating North America. So America was a land of competition, that was a battleground. So each country had to play well to occupy the land. So France, Spain, and England were in competition on the American land. I repeat, and I told you that the last to arrive was England. And England took control of the beginnings of what is now America. If America was born later, that's the part that England, as the last one to arrive, occupied, developed as colonies, and called it British American colonies. All right? Can I see some questions on the chat and I help you? So early European conquest. When I talk about the early European conquest, it's important to insist on Spain and France. Why should we insist on Spain and France? It's because shortly after, it means just after, Christopher Columbus discovered America, quote, in 1492, that's the version that you learned. So Spain and France, and later England started colonies in the Americas. What was the objective? The Spanish came in search of gold. So the Spanish came to have gold. And they colonized Florida. Florida was an American colony. But first, you see, that's why in Florida, people speak Spanish, because it was first occupied by Spain. But you will see later, they will lose it. The English will take it. Then first, they colonized the American Southwest by the 1600s. And from this, their language and culture is spread over. That's why in this part of America, Spanish is spoken. Even today, in Florida, you find people who speak Spanish because the origin was Spanish. And in 1608, the French started a settlement in eastern Canada. When the French came, they went directly to the east, north, and they occupied Canada. That's why you see this marked the beginning of New France. You see, England created New England, and France created New France. Yes, this is a way of giving their name. It's just like when you see some land and chest, you come and you arrive and you take all the land, you call it Kor Musa. Another one takes it Kor Ayib. It's just like that. New France, New England. So the French Empire in America. You have to understand that the French started with Canada. But you will see how Canada became French and English. I will tell you later. It's because later there will be a war. And France, and that part will become England. This is how Canada will become English and French. But just understand here that it was first occupied by the French, and it was part of New France. It is later on that the conflict will take a more serious dimension. Now, the English colonies. When we talk about the English colonies, what do you have to know is that, all right, I have to rush. Queen Elizabeth I of England authorized the start of settlement of a colony on the east coast of America, north of Spanish Florida. But this was a project. You will learn it in British civilization. At this time of history, it was Queen Elizabeth I who was the Queen of England. So she wanted to have a project, and why not go, as the Spanish have occupied Florida, why not go in the east coast of North America and find there one? Because other countries of Europe like Spain, Portugal, and France have gone, England also has to go. So this colony was named Virginia because Elizabeth was nicknamed Virgin Queen. That's how the name of Virginia came. It comes from the nickname of Queen Elizabeth. So under Elizabeth, England had become a rich and powerful nation. And that rich and powerful nation wanted to be in competition with France and Spain. So they too wanted to go and dominate. And you have to understand that at this time of history, there was also a problem of religious conflicts or religious trends. What happened? Elizabeth I had firmly established the Protestant religion. When Elizabeth I came, the Protestant religion dominated in England. So the Anglican Church, or the Church of England, was a national religion of England. You will learn that in British civilization, there were religious conflicts. So Spanish, or Spain and France were, of course, both Catholic. I repeat, they were kind of religious trend. Il y avait des tendances religieuses. So the Europeans were also competing in the domain of religion. France and Spain were Catholic. England were Protestant or Anglican. And so there was also religious hostility between England and these nations. They are all of the same religion, but Spain and France, as I told you, were Catholic. And England was more Protestant and Anglican. So North America became a place where these European countries or superpowers, France, Spain, and England would compete, will have a competition for colonial possession. They all wanted colonial domination. So the spread of religion through missionaries' activities was also a factor of colonialism. So you understand that now, in the mission of exploration and colonization, religion also was a preoccupation. So the missionaries wanted to bring a religion. So under the next king of England, King James I, the colony called Jamestown in Virginia was established. So you understand that, class, the project I explained to you with Queen Elizabeth I to go and establish a colony in Virginia to take her name did not happen. The project came, it happened when King James I became king. And then when he sent, colonizers, they established one, and that's why the colony took his name, Jamestown. But the name Virginia stated remained. So this means that, class, the project of Queen Elizabeth I was achieved by James I. And that is the reason why the colony took the name of King James. So this is the first English colony in America. So King James I of England, also they know that the government is very busy. They cannot control everything. They try to work with private companies. It's just like in Senegal, the development of the country cannot only be the responsibility of the government. The government works with private companies. You see NGOs and everything. The same here. When King James I came, he collaborated with private companies like the London Company and the Plymouth Company. These companies are colonizing companies. So he collaborated with them. He gave them the authorization to go to the American continent and occupy some land and colonize and settle there and create colonies. When they create colonies, these colonies will belong to the British colonies. I repeat, class, that English government and the private companies. What are these private companies? Tell me. London Company and the Plymouth Company. That's why you see there would be a kind of administrative colonies and there will be kind of private colonies, colonies established by private companies. So what is the result, class? In 1612, settlers started growing tobacco in Virginia, and more English went there. So you see, the land was interesting. Agriculture was a good thing. When the English settlers arrived in Virginia, they started growing tobacco. Thus, what is the result? America, the new land, the new world, was becoming a good place for British merchants to invest. So America became an attractive land, a land of opportunities. So now about the founders. I told you about the founders, class. What do you need to know about the founders? C'est les pères fondateurs. The people who established the colonies are considered founders rather than immigrants. I repeat, those who established the colonies, it means they founded the colonies. So do not call them immigrants. Even if they left Europe, they arrived in America, but they are the pioneers, ce sont les pionniers. So that's why they could be called founders, but not immigrants. Immigrants are now today Africans, Europeans who live and who go there. But these people, those who established the colonies, call them founders. They are not immigrants. Why? We should call them founders because they created the customs, les coutumes, because they created the laws, and they created the institutions, to which later arrivals, the immigrants had to adjust. And all this, they did it for the next generations, the generation of, immigrants and everything. Is it clear, class? I repeat, the founders are those who established the colonies. They are not immigrants because they are the pioneers. It is they who founded the colonies. They are founders. Why? Because they created the customs, les coutumes. They created the laws, the culture, and institution. So the Spanish, as I told you, they occupied coastal Florida, the Southwest, and California. California also was Spanish in the 1500s and 1600s. Florida, California, until now, these American states, people use Spanish. So after trying to enslave natives, they worked to convert them into Christianity. So there is a kind of evangelization. So they impose, the Spanish, I told you, they were Catholic like the French. They started now imposing people their religion to impose Christianity. Farming and sheep herding. Sheep herding means, cattle breeding, élevage. Because many natives rejected the way of life, the Spanish colonies faced border attacks for over 2 centuries. Because of the hostility, because of the conflicts, they wanted to impose them. So there were kind of border attacks. This means simply that the Spanish colonies or the Spanish used to be attacked in their borders. So the English, I told you again, established their first permanent settlement in Jamestown in 1607. And instead, the Crown legalized companies. I told you this. After they established their first colony in Jamestown, they legalized companies. It means they authorized private companies like the London Company and the Plymouth Company as private commercial enterprise. These were private commercial enterprises. So they could collaborate with the English government to go and colonize more, to help them expand the British Empire. So they worked with these companies. When I ask you the private companies that help facilitate settlement for the English, tell me it is the London Company and the Plymouth Company. Class, that's why it's important to follow the lectures. The questions that ask, even when I lecture, you should know them. So in 1630s, all right, Lord Baltimore established Maryland. So you see that expansion started. More colonies were settled. Maryland as a heaven space, it means place sûre, abri sûr, for Catholics. Place. English most persecuted minority. So Maryland's leadership remained Catholic for some time. So the Catholics in America, they were more concentrated maybe in Maryland for that time. But its economy and population soon resembled Virginia. But Maryland and Virginia are neighboring colonies. So there was a resemblance between their population and their economy. It's just like Senegal, the Gambia, or Senegal, Mauritania, or Senegal and Mali. They resembled. We speak Wolof, Gambians, we speak Wolof. We speak Pular and Wolof, Mauritanians, we speak that. We resemble. Virginia and Maryland were neighboring colonies, they resembled. So in the 1660s, as the English aristocrats financed Georgia and the Carolina, you see it continued. Georgia, English aristocrats established Georgia, they financed. And the Carolinas, because there is North Carolina and there is South Carolina. They use all this as commercial investment and experiments in social organization. So within a generation, these colonies resemble, they look like Virginia. Why? Because understand that it is in Virginia that the first colony was established in Jamestown. So the other colonies looked like Virginia. They had to copy from it. It's just like the first anno of our university. When the other annos came, they had to copy it. So if we consider our university like a colony, we have 17 colonies. Eno Chess, Eno Ziguinchor, Eno Kolda, Eno this, Eno that. So we expanded. That's how they did. So within a generation, these colonies to resemble the Virginia, but their cash crops means culture commercial, was rice and indigo. But there, in Virginia, people grow tobacco, but here the difference is they use rice and indigo. Indigo, c'est le bleu, okay? And rice. So the southern settlers, they warred. It means they launched war. They waged war with natives within a few years of their arrival. And by the 1830s, they drove the Native American from today's South. What happened? When the settlers came, they found their Native Americans. So they had to push the Native Americans to move. And they pushed the Native Americans to move to the South. That's why there was a big concentration of Native Americans in the South of America. And now I come back to the religious issue. Now to escape religious oppression, if I come back from religious issue, you see in the domain of religion, you need to know some details about those people called pilgrims or those people called Puritans. To escape religion oppression in England, the pilgrims means le pèlerin, a small group of radical separatists from the Church of England founded the first of the northern colonies in 1620 at Plymouth in Massachusetts. So a colony was found in Massachusetts, but that colony was established by the pilgrims. Who are the pilgrims? The pilgrims are religious people. And the pilgrims, why are the pilgrims? Ce sont des pèlerins. They were called radical separatists. Why was they called radical separatists? Because they wanted to separate from the Church of England. For them, the Church of England was not very poor. The church was corrupt. The church was oppressing them, did not allow them to practice their religion, and they were frustrated. People call them radical separatists. And they could not stay in Europe. The solution is to move, to escape, and to benefit from the blessings of God. And they went to America as pilgrims. People call them Puritans. Why Puritans? It comes from purify, because the Puritans wanted to purify the Church of England. For them, the Church of England was not just. The Church of England was kind of corrupt, and they thought the Church of England was oppressing them. So they were persecuted. It means they were oppressed in Europe. So as they were oppressed, persecuted, there was a religious persecution. The only solution is to run away. And to run away, what did they do? They left Britain, they left England, and they had to go to the New World. For them too, the New World is a good place because Europe was not a good place. Religion was a problem. So they are separatists. They don't want to, abide by the Church of England, and they were oppressed. And they said, the occasion is here. Let us go to the New World in search of place where we could practice our religion. So when the pilgrims went to America, they were in search for God. They were looking for God to help them. And then they started taking the sea. So their dream of the Puritans was to find the promised land. Class, please follow. So these pilgrims, they had a big dream. They said, everybody is going to, the New World. Why not go there? In Europe, we cannot find God. We are oppressed. And then the big dream was to take the sea and look for God. They went to America as a promised land. That's why you see America uses the image of the Bible, the promised land, la terre promise. So the pilgrims went there for that purpose. So the hard situation of persecution to them led them to leave England and create the New England colonies. So when they arrived in England, they left England, those New England colonies. So when they came, they left England, they had to establish the New England. You will see a group of colonies called the New England. So the New England colonies are the colonies established by the Pilgrims, the Puritans, with a strong tie between church, government, and everyday life. So you will see later on, when I talk about the categories of colonies, the New England colonies, they were typically religious, because when these people left, there was a problem with religion. When they came, they was in contact with God and in government. So what happened with the Puritans? So the Puritans braved the sea. They braved the sea and they moved to the New World. They were called separatists in England. Why did people call them separatists? They called them separatists because their option or their desire was to separate, was to break from the Anglican Church. Why? Because the Anglican Church oppressed them, persecuted them. All right, class? Please feel free to ask your questions. So the Puritans had strict religious beliefs. So when the Puritans arrived in America, they had their own beliefs. What were the beliefs? The Puritans lived lives resolves around strong values. If I ask you what were the values of the Puritans, it was work and prayer. They believed in hard work and they believed in prayer because they worshiped God. So the Puritans found first the Plymouth colony. They created the Plymouth colony. So the Plymouth colony was, created by the Puritans. And then they make it larger. They established much larger Massachusetts Bay Colony. It became the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So these Puritans, again, to help you understand, their objective was to purify the Church of England, but not totally to separate from it. That's what some people say. Some said their aim was rather to restore it to its original purity. Their way was to restore original purity because they thought the church was corrupt. It was not only for God, it was for political things. And one characteristic of Puritans was they were well educated. One characteristic of them, they were well educated, middle class people in America. All right? So Puritans believed they could create a city upon a hill. This is an image, a city upon a hill. Why a city upon a hill? Because this is to show how English society could be reformed. When they create a city upon a hill, because remember, they left England because England was characterized by oppression, religious persecution. So when they want to create a city upon a hill, they wanted to correct this problem. So what happens? The idea of city upon a hill came from John Winthrop. Class, you need to know John Winthrop. He was influencing a great religious figure, a Puritan leader. What did John Winthrop do? John Winthrop gave a lecture, and the city upon a hill came from his lecture. And the lecture or treatise, it was called a model of Christian charity. In John Wiltrop's lecture, A Model of Christian Charity, he delivered that lecture on March 21st, 1630. That was at Holyrood Church in Southampton, before his first group of Massachusetts Bay colonists embarked on a ship Arbella to settle Boston. What was it? You know, Puritans are religious people, and they believed in religion. So before the Arbella ship had to go, so John Wiltrop gave a lecture, a preach. Il a prêché. Wiltrop was a leading Puritan figure. So he was a leading Puritan figure. He was just like what you call an imam. Winthrop wanted his fellow Puritans that their new community would be as a city upon a hill. And their eyes of all people are upon us. What did he say? He told them that, okay, they have to build a city upon a hill because their eyes of all the people are upon us. It's like what you say to all of ñëpp ñu ngi teg seen bët ci ñun. Am ñu droit échouer. All the eyes of people are upon us. It's just like the French, the Wolof expression, ñëpp ñu ngi ñuy xool, ñëpp ñu ngi bàyyi xel. So this meant that if the Puritans failed to uphold their covenant with God, what does it mean? This means if the Puritans failed their contract with God, then their sins and errors would be exposed for all the world to see. It's just like it was a contract. C'était comme un contrat avec Dieu. Si jamais ils trahissent leur contrat avec Dieu, Dieu va les maudire en exposant leurs péchés et leurs erreurs devant tous les yeux du monde. Is that clear? So he said, so if we shall deal falsely with our God in this work, I told you they believed in work and prayer. So religion played a role in the Puritan community. So John Wiltrop said, if we shall deal falsely with God in this work we have undertaken and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us. So it means God will stop helping us if we stop respecting him. And we shall be made a story and by word through the world. And this means that God will expose us, humiliate us. That's what John Wiltrop wanted to say. In simple word of words. Excuse me, I'm not a word of a speaker. So for this purpose, you see how it impacted over 20,000 people emigrated in around 10 years. So by the later 1600s, the Bay Colony had expanded to the coast of present-day Maine. And you see that the Massachusetts Bay Colony became a larger one. It went to Maine, and it occupied Maine, and it swallowed up Plymouth and created the colony of Connecticut. So it became a greater one. It moved from Massachusetts Bay to Maine, Plymouth, and it created a new colony. Connecticut came. So the founding of the middle colonies. There is also what we call middle colonies. I talked about New England colonies. New England colonies were religious. So the middle colonies, you have New York. Do not worry, later in the next chapter, there is a clear explanation and division of the colonies. In the middle colonies, when I ask you what are the middle colonies, it is New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. These ones are a little bit different from the Middle England colonies. Why? Because the earliest European communities here, they were Dutch and Swedish outposts. of the fur trade that almost accidentally grew into colonies. Because here there was a kind of fur trade. Fur, c'est four in French, c'est la peau. Vous voyez que ça, ce n'est pas très développé ici, mais souvent vous voyez les Maures qui font du commerce en exploitant les peaux et tout ça, les tannes en Wolof. Now, Pennsylvania's founders were Quakers. You may ask me, Quakers, who are they? Still religious. Quakers who flocked from the colony of Charles II, granted area to William Penn in 1681 as a religious refuge. What happens? The Quakers are a group of religious people. That people call it Society of Friends, Société de Frères. It's just like the Ibadu who calls themselves frère. The Quakers, they are a sect, sorry for the word. People call them a society of friends. And then I will finish maybe with New England. When people talk about New England also, you have to understand that in New England, life was characterized by the presence of Puritans. I insist on Puritans so that you class understand what is the role of Puritans. Life in New England was marked by the presence of Puritans. Paragraphs or pages. The first group of Puritans landed in Massachusetts in 1620, and they founded the Plymouth colony. And the Plymouth colony, which they expanded later on to become the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They settled the Plymouth, and the Plymouth was bigger to become the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630. So the first Puritans arrived in America in a ship called the Mayflower. Le bateau qui les a amenés s'appelle le Mayflower. And that was December 17, 1620. And in 1620, a ship of 102 Puritans landed in Massachusetts. So this marked the arrival of Puritans in America. They arrived on December 17, 1620, and they came in a ship called the Mayflower. And this was a long journey of 65 days, more than 2 months, across the Atlantic Ocean. They crossed the Atlantic Ocean. When they arrived in America, the Plymouth colony was created. So in terms of climate conditions, Massachusetts winters, c'est les hivers. It was very severe, harsh, terrible. And about half of them died in the first winter. When the Puritans came in Massachusetts, they are Europeans, they are not familiar. The winters, les hivers étaient très durs, les climats, les conditions climatiques. And many of them died. What happened? An Indian named Squanto, who could speak English before they arrived, taught the Puritans how to plant corn and where to fish and hunt. This story is very interesting, class. Why? Because you see Americans today, in the fall, after their first harvest, they had a feast in 1620, which was Thanksgiving. You see Americans today, they celebrate Thanksgiving. What happens? This reminds them the beginning of America. When the Puritans came, they were not familiar with the land. They did not know the environment. The climate was terrible. The winters, it was very cold. Many of them died. But with the help of an Indian called Squanto, who could speak English, he communicated with them. He collaborated with them. And he showed Puritans how to plant corn and where to fish and hunt. And they survived. And then when they survived, in the fall, c'est comment dirais-je, l'automne, they had their harvest, the premier récolte, and then they had to Thanksgiving. So in Thanksgiving, they have to thank God, and they have to thank God for giving them the opportunity to come at the promised land. And they have to thank also Squanto. That's why you see Thanksgiving is celebrated in fall. the last Thursday of November. So in 1629, what you see as the Puritans came to start the Massachusetts Bay Colony in Boston. So the New England Puritans wanted to make a religion community that strictly followed God laws. So you will see that in the New England, Puritans wanted to give an important place to God and laws. So they saw a need for higher education. So they were very, high-class people. So they thought education was important. And they started to train the clergy, it means religious people. And in 1636, a wealthy colonist called John Harvard helped to start Harvard College. Today, you see Harvard University, it started with a college, and it was established by a Puritan. And that wealthy colonialist was John Harvard, and Harvard College took his name. Today, it is what has become Harvard University, the best university in the world. And you see now the last colonies. We talk about New England colonies, middle colonies, and southern colonies. Class, when I ask you the three group of colonies, tell me about southern colonies, tell me about middle New England colonies, and tell me about middle colonies. Now I finish with southern colonies. I will finish in 5 minutes. The southern colonies. The people of Virginia, they grew tobacco as its cash crop. Cash crop, I told you, is culture commercial. The cash crop. So tobacco was enormously popular in Europe. So tobacco was very famous in Europe, very popular. And it helped bring great wealth into American southern colonies. So they used the agriculture, the fact of growing tobacco, to bring it in the southern colonies of America. So what was the result? Tobacco and also rice cultivation required a large labor force, more than was available from whites and Indians. So as agriculture was a good business, so they had to cultivate tobacco and rice. It means they needed more labor force. Labor force means main-d'oeuvre. And these were whites and Indians. That's why you see, this is what encouraged slavery. Yes, I have to open that parenthesis. It is from this period that people started going to Africa and bring Black people because they wanted to have more labor force, plus the main-d'oeuvre. So the white people and the Indians could not work. They had to go back to Africa and Asia, bring people. But that's not the point here. So the Carolina, I told you there is North Carolina and South Carolina. They were given to some private merchants in 1634 and grew quickly and became new colonies. That's why you have North and South Carolina in 1729. So North Carolina was mostly small farms, but South Carolina has large number of big plantations. And South Carolina. In North Carolina, it was characterized by small farms. In South Carolina, you had big plantations. So in 1732, what you have is that King George II, he gave land to a group of wealthy men of North Spanish Florida. So you see, as I told you, the king had a lot of power. So they mandate people to go and occupy land. This new colony was therefore called Georgia. And what King George, you see George, and the colony takes his name. James, the colony took his name, Jamestown. And when he ordered that, when King George came, another colony was established and the colony took his name, Georgia. So what is the characteristic of Georgia? Like other southern colonies, Georgia rapidly grew and became a colony in 1755. So I finish with this. If you have your questions, you can post them in the chat. There is also what you have to understand. During occupation, the settlement, what is called British mercantilism and colonialism. What is mercantilism? So the American colonies, they were part of European system of trade called mercantilism. So Europeans had a system of trade, commerce, that they called mercantilism. What does mercantilism mean? So mercantilism is an economic policy where a nation's government tries actively to protect actively domestic markets, merchants, and industries. So it means the country, for example, England was a dominating power. England wanted to use its policies, its political strategies to actively protect its domestic market, its merchants and industries. Yes, so they wanted to protect it and dominate, to monopolize everything. So it does this by restricting imports. So when they do that, they impose or they restrict imports. So it means they block imports through heavy tariffs and duties. You see, Donald Trump has done it. So they tax heavy tariffs and duties and shipping regulations. So this policy also encouraged exports because it meant more money coming in, less flowing out. So the strategy is to favor, to encourage exportation and to limit importation. So I take all my goods, I send it to you, you buy, but I don't take your goods. And I fix tariffs, imports. This is a strategy. And if that does not work, they can use military power or they can engage a war. It would be used to enforce mercantilist policies. So these are my references. You will see it. And thank you for your attention. I hope it was good for you. So I have finished chapter 1. Now that I have finished chapter 1, I encourage you again to go and read and also go and take the knowledge test. Test the connaissance. Take it class, please. It is important. Feel free to ask me questions. Thank you for coming. I hope it was good today too. I hope it was helpful for you. I can still stay here to take, your questions. I hope it was helpful for you, so feel free to ask questions. So class, thank you very much. I have to stop here. This is the first chapter of American civilization. So have a good day. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I want to see your reactions on the chat. I cannot see anything. So I want to be sure that all of you, are following. And I will be happy to see your comments and be able to answer your questions. So class, thank you so very much. Okay, take time to read again, to follow the video and do your, knowledge checks. Have a good day. Thank you, class. Thank you.